Hey there folks, Wrel here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the NS-11A, which is an assault rifle from Nanite Systems, meaning that it's available to all factions for the Combat Medic class. We'll be breaking down the statistics, offering up some advice on how to use it effectively, and hopefully help you make a decision on whether or not this weapon will fit your personal playstyle. The NS-11A's base model is 1000 certs or 700 station cash to unlock, though there are black and gold variants available for more station cash, and there have also been a couple of promotions in the past that gave away platinum versions of this weapon. If you do unlock this weapon with station cash, it'll be available across your entire account, but if you unlock it with certs, it'll only be available to the character you've unlocked it on. The NS-11A deals 143 damage up to 10 meters and drops off to 125 at 65 meters. This is the common 143 damage range model for assault rifles, which means that it's a 7-shot kill up to 10 meters, and 8 shots anywhere beyond that. If you land only headshots, that'll be 4 shots to kill at any range. The NS-11A fires at 652 rounds per minute, or about 10.87 rounds per second. If you're looking at a purely theoretical time to kill, meaning that all shots land on the chest, bullet travel is instant, and your target isn't running nanoweave, you'd end up with a 0.55 second time to kill within 10 meters, a 0.64 second time to kill anywhere beyond that, and with headshots alone, you're looking at a 0.28 second time to kill. Compared to other weapons, this is a relatively long time to kill, but the weapon does have some excellent features that offset this disadvantage. The NS-11A has 35 rounds per magazine with 175 in reserve. Most non-TR assault rifles have 30 rounds per magazine with 180 in reserve. So while you aren't getting any additional ammo in total, you are getting that 5 extra shots per reload, and that's a pretty big deal. It's also worth mentioning that if you are running the ammo belt suit slot, you're getting additional magazines worth of ammo instead of a static amount, which means that you'll be getting more ammo than the other assault rifles will. On top of those 5 extra rounds, the NS-11A also has above average reload speeds at 2 seconds short and 2.45 seconds long. This makes it much harder to put yourself in a bad position, getting caught in a reload and not being able to fight back. Another excellent trait of the NS-11A is that it has a 0.75 times aim down sight's movement speed multiplier, which basically means that you move at 75% of your normal speed while aiming down sights instead of the 50% of your normal speed for most weapons. The NS-11A has very high projectile velocity at 640 meters per second, which is only slightly less than the CME and the Gauss rifle variants, which have a 30 and 10 meter per second advantage, respectively. As far as accuracy goes, the NS-11A recoils up and to the left, which is a pattern not commonly found among weapons. Most either recoil straight up or up and to the right. So if you're used to compensating for right pull recoil, then this could technically throw you off, but the NS-11A's recoil is so controllable that you probably won't find it too difficult to get used to. The NS-11A has a first shot recoil of 0.66, a subsequent vertical recoil of 0.22, a horizontal recoil of 0.2 with a tolerance of 0.6, which just means that the weapon can move left or right only 3 times before coming back to center, and a recoil angle of -20 to -17 degrees. What this means is that the first shot recoil is not good. It's 0.66, that's relatively high, but due to the weapon's lower rate of fire and subsequent recoil of 0.22, it's very easy to compensate for. Something that you can't compensate for are the 3 degrees of angular variance. However, because both the vertical and the horizontal recoil is so low, the groupings are still very, very tight. From a cone of fire perspective, your COF while aiming down sights and moving is 0.25 and it blooms at a rate of 0.05, whereas your moving hipfire cone of fire is 2.25 and blooms at a rate of 0.1. So while aiming down sights, the only weapons that have a tighter aim down sights cone of fire are burst variants, and from the hip, your cone of fire is best in class. It's the same as CQC assault rifles, but you don't have access to an advanced laser sight, so they're still going to be able to edge you out. As far as attachments go, the NS-11A has access to scopes 1x through 4x, including IR-NV, a compensator, flash suppressor, standard suppressor, forward grip, laser sight, and dark light, as well as soft point and high velocity ammo. For scope selection, I tend to stick with a 1x or 2x reflex. It's just really hard to go wrong with either one of those, regardless of weapon. Also, Nanite Systems weapons actually have really good iron sights too, which is a nice change of pace for those who don't feel like dumping certs into a reflex sight right off the bat. A compensator will lower your vertical recoil by 15%, but increases your minimap detection range from 40 meters to 75 meters, and it also increases your hipfire starting cone of fire by 20%. Because of that last part, I don't suggest running a compensator. The hipfire on the NS-11A is outstanding, and even though it's a lower rate of fire weapon, not specifically suited to close quarters, hipfire is still very, very useful in a lot of situations, and the baseline recoil of this weapon is very controllable anyway. A flash suppressor is going to conceal your muzzle flash, which is very useful for dusk time and nighttime fighting, since you not only remove the muzzle flash for yourself, but your enemies won't be able to see your muzzle flash from 200 meters away, either. Muzzle flash means you get spotted. When you get spotted, you die. That's how this game works for fights over range. In this capacity, it's even more useful on a Nanite Systems weapon, since the tracers and audio signature don't say which faction you are, one way or another. The downside is that the flash suppressor bumps up your cone of fire bloom values by 20%. This is not a huge issue close to close mid-range unless you tend to mag dump a lot, but at mid to long range, you're going to be bursting to keep your shots on target. I do not like the standard suppressor on this weapon because the lower rate of fire already gives you a baseline for lower damage output, and the suppressor will drop your projectile velocity by 40%, which for the NS-11A moves you from 640 meters per second to 384 meters per second. And that's basically the same sort of velocity that you're going to find on close quarters weapons. On top of that, you lose 5 meters off your 7-shot kill range. The upsides are that you no longer show up on the minimap, which is a reduction of 40 meters, and you also lose your muzzle flash and change the audio profile a bit. It's still a viable option, but you'll be trading off one of your main strengths to improve upon areas the weapon doesn't need to be good at in the first place. A forward grip on this weapon will do a lot of good things in the recoil department, as it reels in recoil variance and horizontal shake and horizontal tolerance, but the weapon is already really accurate, and equipping a forward grip also has the downside of increasing your equip time by 0.1 seconds, which will move you from 0.65 seconds by default to 0.75 seconds. This is not a massive downside, but it's worth considering. The forward grip is great, don't get me wrong, it's a very, very solid attachment on basically all of your automatic weapons, but I'm personally partial to the laser sight. Equipping a laser sight is going to reduce your hip fire cone of fire by 33%, with no downsides other than the actual laser effect, which is visible, but you can always turn it off using your attachment key, which is X by default. And yes, it should be off for other players as well, so long as they're not rendering you for the first time. Soft point ammo is going to bump up your maximum damage range from 10 meters to 15 meters, and do so at the cost of 5% of your bullet velocity, which pulls you from 640 down to 608. This is not a huge decrease, and it's well worth the damage that you'll be getting. High velocity ammo, on the other hand, will bump up your minimum damage range, presumably somewhere within the realm of 10 to 20 meters, but that won't actually reduce your shots to kill at any range. And the additional damage that you'd be receiving is negligible at best. You'll also incur a 10% increase in vertical recoil, which is especially bad for the first shot. HVA does have the upside of increasing your projectile velocity by 5%, which will bring you from 640 meters per second to 672 meters per second, and that gives you the equivalent velocity of the CME, which has the fastest default assault rifle velocity in the entire game. If you couple HVA with the compensator, you'll still be netting a benefit overall, but if you really want to fight at longer range, it'd just be better to drop HVA altogether and take the compensator for the full 15% vertical recoil reduction, as the increase HVA provides won't really make a noticeable difference. My personal setup for this weapon is a 1x or a 2x reflex, a flash suppressor when it's useful, laser sight, and soft point ammo. Always soft point ammo. This setup gives the weapon no noteworthy downsides from close to close mid-range, which is where most fights tend to take place anyway. As far as weapon-specific strategy goes, you should know, first and foremost, that this is a headshot weapon. The controllable recoil and lower rate of fire makes headshots not only very doable, but also very necessary, at least in a stand-up fight. The second is that you should really work your 0.75 times ADS movement. Slicing corners while aiming down sights is much easier to do with the increased movement speed, and you'll definitely feel it. And when you do get into a stand-up 1v1, bob in and out of cover, or strafe left and right. In close quarters, and if somebody gets a drop on you, don't be afraid to back out of the scope and hipfire. The tighter spread and your increased movement, on top of the fact that you're a medic and have some healing going on in the background, it'll help you a lot if you get jumped. Despite not being a CQC-oriented weapon, you can still hold your own when the situation lines up. The last piece of advice here is to try to stick with your allies, or at least where there are noteworthy distractions around you. If you want to run and gun by yourself, then something with a little bit more stopping power would probably be a better option, especially when you come up against an enemy heavy. But if you aren't the immediate focus, or if the enemy has a split focus, then you can put the bullets exactly where you want them, and the weapon becomes a real menace on the battlefield. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. And I do realize that a lot of you probably have the NS-11A already, or some variant of it, since it was one of the first and most commonly promoted items, but let me know what you think about it. With everything that's been released, all the balance adjustments that have been made over time, how do you think that it stacks up against today's arsenal? Leave those thoughts in the comment section down below. Thanks very much, folks. Wrel signing off.
I was wondering, like, how the fuck? I swear that dude had a red name. There's an infiltrator ran over it while I was standing there.
Yeah, I'm dropping claymores on these corners, man, so you can't get you behind this, ease.
I'm sorry. If I did that, I'm sorry.
Spotted a hostile.
Loyalty until death.